Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. We're reading from Canto 11, Chapter 7, and the text is 39. Prana Vrijayva Santujyen Munir Naivendriya Priyai Jnanam Yatana Nashyeta Navakiryeta Vanmanaha Pranavrityaiva Santujyen Munir Naivendriya Priyai Jnanam Yatana Nashyeta Navakrityeta Vanmana Pranavrityaiva Santujyen Munir Naivendriya Priyai Jnanam Yatana Nashyeta Navakriyeta Vanmana. Please chant. Pranavrityaiva Santujyen Munir Naivendriya Priyai Jnanam Yatana Nashyeta Navakriyeta Vanmana Pranavrityaiva Santujyen Munir Naivendriya Priyai Jnanam Yatana Nashyeta Navakriyeta Vanmana. Thank you very much for chanting. The word-for-word translation, this is by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, as is the purport. Pranavritya, with the mere functioning of his vital air. Eva, even. Santushyet, should be satisfied. Muni, a sage. Na, not. Eva, indeed. Indriya Priyai, with things that gratify the senses. Jnanam, consciousness. Yata, so that. Na nashyeta, may not be destroyed. Na avakriyeta, may not become disturbed. Vak, his speech. Mana, and mind. And the translation is as follows. A learned sage should take his satisfaction in the simple maintenance of his existence, and should not seek satisfaction through gratifying the material senses. In other words, one should care for the material body in such a way that one's higher knowledge is not destroyed, and so that one's speech and mind are not deviated from self-realization. And the purport, a wise man does not absorb his consciousness in the forms, flavors, aromas, and sensations of material sense gratification, but rather accepts activities such as eating and sleeping simply to keep body and soul together. One must properly maintain one's body by regulated activities of eating, sleeping, cleansing, etc. Otherwise, the mind will become weak and one's spiritual knowledge will fade away. If one eats too austerely, or if in the name of selflessness one accepts impure food, surely one loses control of the mind. On the other hand, if one eats food that is excessively fatty or rich, there will be an unwanted increase in sleep and semen, and thus the mind and speech will be overwhelmed by the modes of passion and ignorance. Lord Krishna has summarized the whole matter in Bhagavad Gita by his statement, Yuktahara viharasya yukta chetasya karmasu. One should moderately and intelligently regulate all of one's bodily activities so that they are favorable for self-realization. This technique is taught by the bona fide spiritual master. If one is too austere, or if one engages too much in sense gratification, self-realization is impossible. It is the duty of a devotee of the Lord to avoid seeing any object as separate from Krishna, because that is illusion. A gentleman will never try to enjoy the property of another gentleman. Similarly, if one sees everything in relation to Krishna, there is no scope for material sense gratification. But if one sees material objects as separate from Krishna, then one's material enjoying propensity is immediately aroused. A human being must be intelligent enough to distinguish between prayas, or temporary gratification, and shreyas, permanent benefit. One may accept sense activity in a regulated, limited fashion so that one will be strong for serving Krishna. But if one excessively indulges the material senses, one will lose one's gravity and seriousness in spiritual life and act like an ordinary materialist. The ultimate goal, as stated here, is jnanam, or steady consciousness of the absolute truth, Lord Krishna. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurimilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Juta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavan Ishvari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimata Romapada Swami Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much for being present in the class this morning. So I'll read the text again. A learned sage, this is a mendicant brahmana who's talking. A learned sage should take his satisfaction in the simple maintenance of his existence and should not seek satisfaction through gratifying the material senses. In other words, one should care for the material body in such a way that one's higher knowledge is not destroyed, and so that one's speech and mind are not deviated from self-realization. So this mendicant Brahmana is responding to King Yadu. And this is Lord Krishna relating this whole interaction to Uddhava. And this Brahmana, or King Yadu, had asked the mendicant Brahmana where he had attained his great intelligence, by which he was wandering the earth like a child, not engaged in work. So that was the query that came from King Yadu to this Brahmana. Where had he got his great intelligence from? So that was a little bit earlier in this chapter. So Lord Krishna notes that the intelligent, because remember, he's relaying this whole interaction to Uddhava. So through the course of the narration, Krishna also says his thoughts. So Krishna notes that the intelligent King Yadu was always respectful to the Brahmanas. And so when he was asking and honoring the Brahmanas, just by his mood, he had this particular Brahmana respond to him because of his own humble mood. So here the Brahmana makes a distinction regarding where a learned sage should find his satisfaction. So the distinction he makes is between the prana and sense objects as sources of satisfaction. So that's not usually what one thinks of, because prana is so subtle. So the particular emphasis on prana is very significant. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he points to there being two kinds of prana. There's the air prana within the body, and then there's the external air. So prana, as Srila Vishwanath points out, operates. How it's able to operate is through the fact that a human being is eating and by other actions. So we're going to get to what all the other actions are. So prana, together with tejas and ojas, is a vital essence in the body. So these three essences, they control the ordinary mind-body functions and keep us healthy and free of disease. So the biological humors, meaning the pitta, the vata, and the kapha, so the fire, air, earth, when they are increased, they bring about disease. But an increase in the vital essences, it promotes positive health. So, for instance, if there's excessive heat in the body, then one may experience the eyes burning. So that's maybe a sign of future disease up ahead. But in the case of, let's say, if I consult an Ayurvedic practitioner and the pulse is checked and the person says, oh, the ojas is very good, then that's a very good sign. It means that the most subtle product as a result of the digestion of eating is very strong. So that vital essence is strong, and so that's what actually allows for continued good health. Now, these three vital essences, the prana, the tejas, and the ojas, are in fact the key to vitality, to clarity, and endurance, which means that they're necessary for one to feel healthy, to feel fearless even, and to feel confident. So it's extraordinary, isn't it, how it affects both the physiological health and also the emotional, mental health. Fearlessness and confidence is there if these vital essences are functioning well. So prana, the primal life force, because we're looking at this because this mendicant Brahmana is actually putting so much emphasis in actually giving attention to the prana. So prana, the primal life force, or the subtle energy of air, is in fact the master force behind all mind-body functions. It is responsible for the coordination of the breath, of the senses, and of the mind. So, on an inner level, if it governs the development of higher consciousness, and tejas, or the inner radiance, is the subtle energy of fire, through which we digest impressions and thoughts. So see how there's a subtle element operating to allow for even thought digestion, this tejas, the subtle essence of tejas. And on an inner level, it governs the development of higher perceptual capacities, the tejas. So able to perceive more subtly is responsible for that vital essence to be present, the tejas. Now, ojas, or primal vigor, is the subtle energy of water. It's that vital energy reserve. It's the essence of digested food. It's the essence of impressions and thought, or digested impressions and thoughts. So on an inner level, ojas gives calm and support and nourishes all higher states of consciousness. So these are on the very, very, very subtle level. It's so necessary that these three essences are present in and working well. So Lord Krishna gives an explanation for how this master force behind all our mind-body functions, the prana, is in fact joined to him, and how it operates by eating. He gives an explanation. This is how Krishna puts it. This is from the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and join with the air of life, outgoing and ingoing, to digest the four kinds of foodstuffs. So isn't this extraordinary? The most subtle element, the vital air, the prana, Lord Krishna is actually joining in that prana to allow for all this digestion to happen. And this is the Sanskrit, aham vaishvanam bhutva praninam deham ashrita pranapana samayukta pachami anam chaturvidham. So Srila Prabhupada explains it this way. The Supreme Lord, or Brahman, is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuffs. And therefore, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. And Srila Prabhupada quotes from the Vedanta Sutra, the Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. It's very extraordinary. Who thinks that Lord Krishna is present in the vital air? So, now getting satisfaction with the action of the prana is significant, because that's one of the results of having the prana operating properly. There's a sense of satisfaction. And it's significant, and the Brahmana is putting an emphasis on this. It's significant understanding that there's a role played by Lord Krishna and that permits eating. And he's joining with the life force. So particularly when one considers that prana is responsible for the enthusiasm and expression in the psyche, without which one suffers from depression and mental stagnation. So see the two opposite pictures. I mean, you see people visibly representing those states. Either one is like enthusiastic and expressive, or on the other hand, you see there's a person who's very mentally stagnant. They repeat the same thing over and over and over. And there's a kind of depression, like a down mood. So the acknowledgement of the Brahmana of getting satisfaction from the action of the prana. So you see how he's subtly understanding the functioning of the body. It's closely tied to this understanding that Lord Krishna, in his assessing the decisions made by a yogi. So this is what Lord Krishna says about how yogi is functioning. I mean, we're hearing the Brahmana's awareness of the importance of prana. So here's Lord Krishna saying something on how a yogi needs to make his decisions. He says, there is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much, or not sleeps enough. So those are the, having to find a balance between eating and sleeping is necessary to be a yogi. So those are the decisions that a yogi has to make in order to allow the prana to be functioning properly. So that was from Bhagavad Gita, the 6th chapter, the 16th verse. So an explanation is given by Srila Prabhupada that draws attention to going contrary to the idea of satisfaction being found in the functioning of prana. So here's when you actually go against how you need to make your decision that Krishna has explained. And Srila Prabhupada puts it across very clearly. One who eats for sense pleasure or cooks for himself, not offering his food to Lord Krishna, eats only sin. This is Srila Prabhupada. One who eats sin and eats more than is allotted to him cannot execute perfect yoga. So there's really spelling it out by Srila Prabhupada. So it's not only the eating too much or eating too little, but cooking and only cooking for oneself, not taking into account Krishna and his role in actually joining with the prana to allow for digestion, because it's all interconnected, having to offer that acknowledgement to the help one is receiving. So the satisfaction aspect lies in not eating anything which has not been offered to Krishna. That's where the satisfaction comes. You're eating something that's been offered to Krishna. So doing so means that a Krishna-conscious person is the only one who can attain perfection in yogic practice. So one may be practicing other forms of yoga, but if one is not actually practicing bhakti yoga, it's not that one can become perfect in one's yoga practices, because it requires getting proper satisfaction through cooking for Lord Krishna, offering that food stuff to Lord Krishna, acknowledging his role in joining with the prana to allow for the digestion of that food stuff. So Srila Vishwanath, he states that jnana will be destroyed by disturbance of the mind caused by disruption of the prana. Isn't that so fascinating that it actually goes even further, that if the prana is disrupted in some way, then actually one's knowledge starts to get destroyed because the mind gets very disturbed. So therefore, Srila Vishwanath says, one should maintain the body by eating in such a way that speech and mind will not create disturbance for jnana, for knowledge. So see how it's interconnected. How one's eating is connected to how one's actually developing or cultivating knowledge. So the ways to be avoided are these. They include indulging in animal food, drinking, smoking, and these may be obvious, but just taking into account the effect on the prana and how it's actually going to disturb the mind. So these functioning, taking in animal food or drinking or smoking, it's disturbing the prana, therefore it's disturbing the mind, therefore one is actually disrupting the prana, the life air. So in addition, fasting, like artificially abstaining from eating or eating more than is required, has the same effect. So the disturbance of the mind takes the form of dreaming a lot while sleeping. So if one eats too much, and therefore one has to sleep more than is required, just by virtue of the fact that one's eaten too much, one's dreaming too much, and therefore one needs to sleep longer. Because the mind and the senses are not getting detached. So that's why too much mental activity while one is sleeping, so you have to sleep more in order to get the proper rest. And that all comes from eating too much. So, so that explains why it's difficult to become a yogi if one's actually not eating in the correct quantity. So Srila Vishwanath explains that the mind and the speech will be agitated by food which is too oily because of an increased, because it increases laziness and production of semen. So tejas, which governs mental digestion and absorption, is disrupted. So that's which vital essence gets affected by eating oily food stuff, the tejas. So how one is digesting mentally then gets disrupted. And even one's being able to be absorbed mentally gets disrupted because the prana is getting disrupted. So there comes to be a lack of clarity, not being able to see things clearly. And also one's determination is affected. The determination goes down. And this is all just from oily food stuff. I've seen an Ayurvedic preparation that has written on the bottle, during the taking of this medicine, do not take oily foodstuffs. So, yeah, governs mental digestion. It was a medicine actually to allow the mind to function properly. So you can see that that's what's getting disrupted. The tejas is getting disrupted. Now, one can look at some inconsistent reasoning, which reflects the lack of clarity and determination, which is what happens when this vital essence, the tejas, is affected by the prana getting disrupted through oily food stuff. So here's an example. A person will say to you, of course I'm a vegetarian, but not on weekends. Now that's an example of the vital essence of tejas actually not being very strong. There's a lack of clarity. The person can't see that there's a problem, that there's a principle that's being followed by being vegetarian, and you can drop the principle on certain days of the week. So there's lack of clarity in the thinking. And of course, naturally it shows like an inability to maintain the determination for all 7 days of the week. So that's just a simple example. So basically, without the proper vital essence, the mind cannot function properly. And the mind, in fact, cannot be healed without improving and harmonizing these energies. So it's very interesting because we're looking at why this mendicant Brahmana is putting so much emphasis on the maintaining the prana. So there's an argument that's presented by Lord Krishna on this point. And he says this: O mighty arm, son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So there's Krishna directly saying it, that actually it's difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by proper practice. So we've been looking at what some proper and improper practices are, because it's very much connected to these three vital essences functioning properly. So that was from Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter. So the question is raised theoretically by Srila Prabhupada. This is the question that Srila Prabhupada raises. What is that practice? He asks, what is that proper practice? And he points to practices which are difficult to observe in this age. The strict rules and regulations of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on Supersoul, and restraining the senses and mind. That's actually the proper practice. I mean, we've tried to look a little bit at just how simple maintenance of eating, sleeping comes to affect the focus of the mind, and also how not restraining the senses comes to affect the mind. And so it does make it so difficult to follow rules and regulations. So these were some thoughts. This is as far as I was able to go with this particular text. If there's something that can expand our discussion, please feel free to contribute.
I think because of lack of sleep, my mind is not perfectly. But I was just wondering that we have this Avadhuta Brahmana, the Avanti Brahmana, who is highly elevated, and one may think that, as he explained in this verse, that he's focused on a subtle aspect of his material body rather than, something more transcendental to the material body. I said that, it seems that he is presenting something for a lower level. Like in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes the case for two different levels of yogis. One is the lower class yogi, or the lower level yogi. I think, how's it called? His Ruruksha and Rudra. Ruruksha and Rudra. So for the lower level, then work is to be and then goes into that regulation and the whole thing. But for the higher level, renunciation of the world is okay. Is possible. The higher level, the difference that Krishna made, is that in the higher level, there is no affliction of desires and attachments. So if you're free from attachments and desire, you can renounce the world. But if you're not, if there's any trace of that, then work in devotion is to be the path. And then it comes these instructions of you cannot be a yogi if you're not regulated, etc., etc. So it seems that the Avanti Brahmana is doing something similar, is giving an instruction that is focused on a level that you have to regulate, you have to do these things, you have to follow all these principles in order to keep some tap on the mind. What one would assume is that the Avanti Brahmana, just as Maharaj Jadu noticed, is that he was beyond that. He was fully controlling his mind and senses, and though very much established in renunciation. So I was just wondering, that appears that he is more giving the general instruction of how you can follow a path in which one can elevate oneself in yoga.
Yeah. So whether it's a general instruction, well, these were his words. A learned sage should take the satisfaction in the simple maintenance of his existence and should not seek satisfaction through gratifying the material senses. And and he says, in other words, one should care for the material body in such a way that one's higher knowledge is not destroyed. So just following Srila Vishwanath's line of reasoning, we looked at this caring for the material body, because the caring for the material body is what's allowing for the higher knowledge to develop. We understood that even that quest for knowledge, the jnana part, it actually gets disrupted if the mind is disturbed. So the mind is disturbed if the body is not taken care of properly. So you could say he's giving a general instruction in relation to the necessity for there to be a quest for higher knowledge comes because of proper, or it's very much interconnected with proper care of the material body. And the proper care of the material body is such that just through analyzing it very carefully, you're actually enhancing the vital essences. And those, particularly the prana, one of those vital essences is what is actually the major force through which Lord Krishna is directly present. So that is all the help that one's needing to actually be on a quest for higher knowledge. So it's a very significant instruction because it's so subtle. It requires a careful thought to even think that Lord Krishna is interconnected. He's joined with the prana in every single person's body. So hence the necessity to maintain the body so that particular vital essence is functioning properly. And of course the other vital essences which are allowing for the digestion of thinking. So you can't separate out the quest for transcendental knowledge or coming to a transcendental state of consciousness without taking into account proper care of the material body in a very regulated manner. like I was thinking deeply about this particular, as you pointed out, it's an instruction in some sense, although he's giving his thinking to King Yadu of where he actually gains his strength. You could take it as a kind of instruction. In thinking deeply about the topic, I found myself observing like how I function during the course of a day. And everything is very thought out, even simple actions like I'm going to order the kitchen, so I'm going to put away these eating utensils, or I'm going to put away the cooking pots. And I see it's all very deliberate and very ordered. And at times I've thought to myself, should I be putting so much care and attention to doing such simple tasks when perhaps I should be sitting at a desk and, doing something that is like, preparing a class or doing some writing that is other work that I do. And just because of this verse, it's given me a new insight in actually, no, that is part of regulating one's activities, that you're doing everything with care and attention because it's being done with the consciousness that one's doing it with care for Lord Krishna. So it may be something simple like putting away cooking pots or eating utensils, but as part of that regulated kind of functioning in a day. So I personally found this particular text very strengthening, because sometimes I would, as I said, I would question myself about the care I'm putting into simple tasks. So just understanding it's part of, having the prana functioning well. And so one's mind is peaceful and one's doing things with care, able to do it with consciousness that it's for Lord Krishna, whatever the task is. So that's a response to whether it's an instruction. For me, it was.
Yeah, I also find it, very applicable and relevant. I was just thinking of personalities like, we hear narrations of which one is it? The Goswami who was having just a palm full of buttermilk every so many days. I think Raghunath Das Goswami. Which appears that you're not really taking care of the body, you're beyond that. And we see, Dhruva Maharaj performing his, following the meditation, the mantra that Narada Muni gave him, and he goes for 6 months basically not eating at all, and things like that. That there is a level in which you go past taking care of the body. I mean, obviously that doesn't apply to the majority of us. And in one sense, you also see sages that are, that have their ashrams, which there is maintenance. It's a very simple arrangement, but there is an arrangement, and it's properly maintained. There is eating, and the explanation is that the eating is very simple, roots and fruits and berries and things like that. But there is maintenance, simple. But there's others that, not much.
Well, the ones that are not much like the examples you gave, it has to do with undertaking a particular austerity still in Krishna consciousness. So it's not on a, mundane level, because what we were looking at is like, say somebody is austerely eating too little. It's actually going to disrupt the prana. And so the mind is disrupted. And so that is destroying the quest for higher knowledge. But in the case, I guess, of very elevated personalities, somehow that the prana is kept intact, the vital essence is kept intact, even with some undertaking, some austerity for a higher purpose, that would normally, for a regular person, be disrupting a vital essence, is not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Thank you for your class, Mataji. Deep thoughts. I just wonder if nature has anything to do with this topic. A person's nature, like Arjuna, he was considered pure, right? Pure devotee, right? He was considered pure devotee, but his nature was that he had to do the Kshatriya thing. And then you have other acharyas that are pure, but they are householders. And so I was wondering if nature has anything to do with this topic, the nature of a soul.
Well, the analysis was done in terms of the humours of the body, so the fire, the air, the earth element, their function according to the nature, or the nature is sort of also molded, connected to those particular humours that are prominent in the body. So somebody may have a kind of fiery nature, somebody else may have a very languid nature. So it's connected to the humours in the body, but the essences are connected to how the body is maintained. Because it's the most, those very subtle elements, it's such a subtle substance, like the urges, the tejas, the prana. It's very subtle. So that has to do with the ongoing maintenance of the body, which is then affecting the, on the most subtle level too, the processing of impressions that are coming in, or the processing of emotions. So for that to be going smoothly, it's dependent on the maintenance of the body, how, particularly the eating and the sleeping.
Just thought about like happiness, right? So we're told simply chant and be happy. So how does that play in? Because it seems impossible to preach if a person's not happy. Like, it doesn't quite make sense to preach and then not be able to be an example of what the instruction is, chant and be happy. So all this seems to lead to happiness, and it seems like a part of the process.
Well, it's completely accurate that if you're chanting the Maha Mantra, there's happiness. And why it's accurate, just in relation to the topic we're looking at, is that actually it's what gives one the strength to regulate one's life. Where's the strength going to come from otherwise? Because otherwise, if there's not undertaking that particular, you could say it's a kind of austerity to take to chanting the Maha Mantra a regulated number of rounds. But doing so is actually bringing the senses under control and bringing greater awareness of how one is functioning, how one is taking care of one's body, how one's actually thinking, how one's utilizing one's capacity to search for knowledge. All that comes into sharp focus. If one is not actually chanting, one is in some delusional world of, if I get this, I'll be happy. But it's all completely delusional because it's not sharply focused. It's not in connection with the source of one's being. So things need to be, properly aligned. Otherwise, it's out of alignment. Everything's out of alignment. Yeah. So that's why, you hear that in this, all the time you hear that there's heart disease, there's diabetes, there's a whole list of cancer. And all of those things have to do with, how is that intake of foodstuff? Is it excessive? In most cases, yes. Is it animal food? In most cases, yes. So those, is there drinking and smoking happening? In most cases, yes. So that kind of intake is going to disrupt those vital essences. Means that the tejas, which is allowing for, how you are, how the perceptions are getting processed. It's peculiar, it's confused, there isn't clarity. The prana, there's Lord Krishna joining with the prana to allow for the digestion of foodstuff, and the person is putting that kind of foodstuff into the body. And Srila Prabhupada spells it out, he puts sin. It's, it's just so disrespectful to Lord Krishna and other living entities that how can that final essence of ojas actually be proper or even, be abundant with that kind of intake. So, yeah. You have to say that chant and be happy is completely accurate because it's allowing for the proper alignment, the proper consciousness, the proper awareness of what one is doing and how one is doing it, and monitoring as well, and giving the proper regard and respect to other living entities, to Lord Krishna. So everything's properly aligned. Yeah, the other lifestyles out of alignment. That's why the disease and all the rampant disease. Yeah. So these are some thoughts.
I was just wondering. Thank you, Martha. Very nice.
Thank you very much for attending.
I was just wondering that how this is practically possible. This verse for common people, because it seems to be that the senses are so strong and the necessity of the body is so much, and especially in this Kali Yuga where every step you need money or you need some shelter or you need some food, and then if you go out and like the sages is walking around everywhere, the climate is different, the local peoples are different. How practical is possible in this age?
Eyes will get you.
What is the comment? You have to use the microphone because I also can't hear perfectly.
I was just saying that ICE, the police, will get you and send you to El Salvador or something.
So many things.
So what you were commenting is not practical in this age is to be that kind of a wandering mendicant. That's what you were looking at, or particularly the instruction that one find one's satisfaction in prana, because that was the instruction given by this Brahmana. So which part were you thinking is not practical? The focus on the prana and looking for satisfaction that way, or the one of being a wandering mendicant?
How you maintain yourself, wandering all around the places, because that's what he's doing, the sages is doing. Yeah.
Yes, well, in our society where there isn't a culture that gives respect to such a personality, it would be pretty difficult, one would imagine. I mean, I remember us visiting Govardhan, and one morning we stepped out, and there was like literally a river of saffron-clad persons were carrying their little bucket, and clearly it was a river of such persons, obviously living a very renounced life. Now that is possible in a country where there is respect for that culture, where there's respect and understanding of renunciation in that form. But here there is no such culture. It's one would be equated with somebody sitting in a wheelchair whose daily activity is to reach out on the pavement looking for cigarette stubs or something. You know, there's no understanding of the elevation of the consciousness that would be present in such a renounced Brahmana personality such as this. So yes, you're quite right. Here it's not practical. I mean, in Govardhan, it clearly is. There was a river, literally a river of saffron-clad personalities walking in the morning, one morning, with their buckets. So the whole country has the respect for Brahminical culture. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's totally extraordinary that there's such a country that's got that profound respect for Brahminical culture. It's truly extraordinary. I mean, I truly appreciate it. I mean, the closest I've come to is, I had an uncle who was a cardinal in the Catholic Church, and I saw the great respect that was given to him by nuns and older persons. But the general populace, I don't know whether there was such great respect, I don't know. But I saw that those that were aware of the religious process gave respect. So, yeah. There seems to be an underlying necessity for a whole society to be attuned to the process of elevation of consciousness and the path of self-realization, for the proper regard and care that could be given for such a personality to be surviving perfectly well. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. It is a reflection on society too.
A little longer, but
the class is a little shorter too, so there was space.
I was just going to mention that, you know, you brought out about, and in the purport, about foodstuffs and how they will affect these very important subtle elements that are necessary for vitality and if it's not taking proper care, it will affect the capacity for the mind to understand proper transcendental knowledge. It will compromise, I think that's how I say, it will compromise your capacity for understanding. So it's such an important thing, and in one sense, you know, I always wonder in our society of devotees, that is something that has been almost like gradually lost, the care that is to be made in terms of how we eat. And specifically, you were pointed out about oily foodstuffs. And how that affects, you know, the mind. What is it?
Yes, it affects the determination.
Determination, which is, you know, it's just part of our sort of sadhana life. So that to that sort of loss on that aspect of our devotional life And Krishna puts it, you can't be a yogi if you don't regulate the eating. And but in our temples sometimes we find that there's so much attention to the quality of the foodstuffs that we offer and we eat. But it doesn't seem that as a society we actually, pay much attention to that.
Yeah, it would appear like that, and that has a lot to do with just not being educated in doing everything in the mode of goodness. So the deities receive, one of the items always is a pakora. So there's a deep fried item, it's an oily item, but it has to be properly drained. And I've read in Yamuna's book that, so if it's drained properly, it'll have pretty much the correct amount of oil. But if you don't drain it properly, then that's called oily, and that's what leads to the particular problem that affects the tejas, which is that there's laziness that sets in and a loss of determination. So, yes, there's little aspects of everything we do that one needs to become more conscious of, because there is effect of everything. So the more conscious one becomes, the more, with more care one does everything, the more likely it is that the prana will be functioning wonderfully, and that interconnection with Lord Krishna, being present in the prana, even becomes more prominent. So one does have a life filled with vitality and vigor and endurance. Yeah. So that was just a little response. So thank you very, very much, everybody, for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.